Hey everyone, welcome to this explainer where we are unpacking the massive 2026 controversy surrounding Ubuntu's new default AI telemetry. If you've felt a serious shift in the open source world lately, trust me, you are not alone. Today, we're diving deep into the actual technical architecture of this tracking, and more importantly, laying out the exact mitigation strategies you need to take back control of your system.
So, let's just cut right to the chase with a question that's honestly got the Linux community completely up in arms right now. Is your operating system quietly watching you? For years, Linux has been the ultimate sanctuary for privacy-conscious users. But a major storm hit when users figured out that Ubuntu 24.04 LTS is quietly collecting behavior data, system metrics, and application usage patterns without explicit opt-in consent.
And look, this hasn't just been a few disgruntled complaints on Reddit. Dr. Richard Stallman, the founder of the Free Software Foundation, literally said canonical surveillance is unacceptable. That stark warning perfectly sets the stakes for our explainer today. He definitely didn't mince words. We're looking at a profound tension here between Canonical's drive to monetize their platform through enterprise AI integration and the traditional open-source privacy values that built their massive user base in the very first place.
Our agenda today is totally packed. We'll be running through 1. The AI privacy controversy, 2. The anatomy of Ubuntu telemetry, 3. GDPR and the community backlash, 4. The complex opt-out process, and 5. Privacy-respecting OS alternatives.
All right, kicking things off with part 1, the AI privacy controversy, moving from human beings to machine learning.
You know, Canonical's famous slogan used to be Linux for human beings, right? Well, that focus has visibly pivoted toward enterprise AI integration and harvesting data to train machine learning models. And this didn't just happen overnight. Back in 2020, Ubuntu 20.04 had this minimal, strictly opt-in telemetry. Fast forward to 2024 and boom, Ubuntu 24.04 LTS shipped with AI features enabled by default for everyone. By 2025, this escalated into a major full-blown crisis, triggering a massive community backlash and a formal GDPR probe. For a lot of longtime users, the shift was incredibly jarring.
Which brings us to part 2, the anatomy of Ubuntu telemetry. And man, these roots go deep into the system. Here's the wild part. You might think, oh, I'll just toggle off the privacy setting in the GUI. Well, users quickly realized that's literally just trimming the leaves, because a staggering 85% of Ubuntu installations are actively having their AI services forcibly re-enabled. How does that even happen? Through hidden Snap ML hooks. Even if you manually turn off telemetry, the absolute second your system updates via Snap, which it does automatically, those hooks refresh and flip the tracking right back on. Let's actually pop the hood and map out exactly what is running. It's an incredibly persisting architecture. You've got 5 different AI System D services, plus 3 Snap ML hooks embedded deep in core packages like Core 22 and Snapd. But the craziest part? 2 root-level kernel modules, Canon AI Kmod, and Telemetry Probe. These kernel modules literally hide the AI processes from your system monitors, so you can't even see them in tools like Top or PS. Finally, all of this data funnels out to 8 different Canonical network endpoints, using encrypted DNS and quick protocols just to bypass your standard firewalls.
And look, this isn't just some abstract philosophical privacy debate. There is a real measurable cost to your hardware here. These background machine learning models, they consume anywhere from 200 to 500 megabytes of RAM and chew through 5 to 10% of your CPU, even when your system is completely idle. Plus, every single day, they package up 1.2 megabytes of encrypted payloads and transmit them back to Canonical. It's a massive drain on your system's performance.
All right, let's move into part 3, GDPR and community backlash, where legal risk meets business strategy.
Because you simply cannot push tracking this aggressive to millions of European users without drawing the attention of regulators. 120 million euros. Let that sink in for a second. That staggering number represents the potential fine Canonical is currently facing. Following over 2,000 formal user complaints, the French Data Protection Authority, the CNIL, opened a massive GDPR investigation. Under European law, data collection requires explicit, informed consent. So naturally, Canonical's deeply buried opt-out mechanisms are now under intense legal scrutiny.
We can see a pretty clear divide here. On one side, Canonical argues that this data is anonymized, helps them build a better, smarter product, and that, hey, users can opt out in the settings. But on the flip side, the open source community is absolutely arguing that default tracking violates explicit consent, it shatters decades of user trust, and most importantly, that those GUI opt-outs are basically an illusion because they completely failed to stop the actual background systemd services and snap hooks.
So what can we actually do about it? That takes us to part 4, the complex opt-out process, or trimming those roots.
Since the standard settings menu is basically useless for this, we have to bypass the GUI entirely and get our hands dirty in the command line. To understand the fix, you really need to understand something called persistent mitigation. Because Ubuntu updates are intentionally designed to restore these tracking features, fixing this isn't just a one-and-done deal. If you manually kill a service today, a snap refresh will quite literally resurrect it tomorrow. You actually have to implement automated system scripts like cron jobs or systemd timers to persistently fight your own operating system's updates.
So what does this actually look like in practice? Honestly, it's a daunting 18-command marathon. Step 1. You have to stop and permanently mask all 5 AI system services. Step 2. You must place holds on those core snap packages to stop the ML hooks. Step 3, and this is the absolute wildest part to me, you actually have to rebuild your Linux kernel or switch to a mainline kernel just to strip out those canonical AI modules. And finally, step 4, you have to configure strict NF-tables firewall rules to block those 8 canonical endpoints, specifically making sure you catch that sneaky UDP quick traffic. It literally takes hours.
Which brings us to part 5, privacy-respecting OS alternatives. The Great Migration. Look, for a lot of users, spending hours fighting their own operating system is just a total deal breaker, and that's triggered a mass exodus. Late 2025 market shifts show enterprise and desktop users flocking to alternative privacy-respecting distributions. Fedora saw a massive 40% spike in downloads. Arch Linux surged by 35%. Meanwhile, Ubuntu has seen a definitive 15% drop. The community is absolutely voting with their bandwidth right now.
If you are thinking about jumping ship, there are 3 primary paths people are taking. Fedora is the top choice right now. It gives you a 6-month release cycle with super modern software, and it only takes about 2 hours to migrate to. Then you've got Debian, which offers a 2-year cycle with unmatched stability and strict privacy out of the box. And Arch Linux? Well, that's a rolling release that hands you absolute, total control with zero tracking, provided you're willing to spend the 8+ hours it takes to really learn and configure it from scratch.
And that brings us to the big question wrapping up this explainer. With a €120 million GDPR investigation hanging over their heads and users migrating away to Fedora and Debian by the tens of thousands, what happens next? Will Canonical be forced by regulators and the community to go back to true opt-in privacy? Or is the golden era of Linux for human beings officially dead, completely replaced by an era of mandatory machine learning? It is an absolutely fascinating pivot point in tech history, and we will be watching it very closely. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and remember to keep your system secure